If the administration wants to work with Moscow, it will find a willing though admittedly difficult partner. After returning from a series of meetings with senior officials in Moscow, the degree to which Russian officials remain eager to improve the U.S.-Russia relationship is apparent. Russia's leaders are certainly not desperate, nor are they prepared to accept American terms to resolve the many outstanding disputes between Washington and Moscow, yet they are still hopeful that some way, somehow, President Donald Trump will succeed in overcoming political opposition to build a new and more cooperative bilateral relationship. What they may not yet fully appreciate is the depth of anger and resentment surrounding Russia's interference in the 2016 presidential campaign, perhaps the greatest single obstacle to their aspirations for rapprochement. Nevertheless, they were positive in tone when talking about President Trump, U.S. officials and the United States. I traveled to Moscow from September 25 to September 30 with a delegation organized by the Center for the National Interest. The bipartisan group included Drew Goff, managing director and founding partner of the investment firm Sigler Goff, and a vice chair of the Center for the National Interest, Davs Zakim, another center vice chair, who served as Under-Secretary of Defense during the George W. Bush administration, Zalmay Khalilzad, a center board member and former U.S. ambassador to the United Nations, Iraq and Afghanistan, Celeste Wallander, president of the U.S.-Russia Foundation and a former special assistant to the President and National Security Council senior director for Russian and Central Asian Affairs in the Obama administration, and my colleagues Center President Dimitri Simes and George Beebe, a former head of the CIA's Russia analysis until 2009 who now directs the center's intelligence and national security program. In addition to participating in a day-long seminar at the Moscow State Institute for International Relations (MGIMO), we met a number of senior officials including Deputy Prime Minister and Russia's former NATO Ambassador Dmitry Rogozin, Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov, Economic and Trade Minister Maxim Oreshkin, and Deputy Foreign Ministers Sergei Ryabkov and Mikhail Bogdanov. We also met Konstantin Kosachev, who chairs the Federation Council's Committee on International Affairs, and the committee's newly elected vice chair, Russia's former ambassador in Washington, Sergei Kislyak. The trip was strictly a private one. We did not seek or receive any messages to deliver in either direction. Our goal was a candid exchange of perspectives with a wide range of officials and experts in Russia's political and foreign policy establishments. Russian officials were largely dismissive of U.S. and European economic sanctions, which some indirectly credit with significantly strengthening Russia's agricultural sector, to such an extent that they claimed Russian products may fiercely compete in Europe if and when the European Union eases its sanctions and Russia lifts its protectionist counter-sanctions. Indeed, the U.S. Department of State itself asserted in 2016 that a loss of at most 1% of GDP can be potentially explained by sanctions as opposed to declining global energy prices. The combination of at most and potentially in this sentence suggests that there is little empirical evidence that sanctions have caused real damage to Russia's economy. Moreover, since U.S. sanctions could account for only a small part of this because Europe's economic relationship with Russia is far larger than America's, there is no reason to think that new U.S. sanctions, which have yet to be fully implemented, will make a material difference at the macroeconomic level. The State Department did find that sanctioned companies appeared to lose significant revenue and assets. Still, some officials did privately admit that the sanctions undermine Russia's investment climate, especially among foreign investors. At the same time, however, some officials reacted quite strongly to the Trump administration's decision to close Russia's consulate in San Francisco, the latest move in an escalating diplomatic spat that began with the Obama administration's expulsion of 35 Russian diplomats and seizure of 2 diplomatic properties in December, following a widely publicized intelligence community report on Russia's election interference. Even in this area, however, our interlocutors seemed to prefer curtailing the dispute over extending it, notwithstanding President Vladimir Putin's recent hint that the Kremlin could cut another 155 people from the number permitted to work at the U.S. Embassy in Moscow. Pages